Welcome to another fabulous episode of Tickle.Life podcast. I'm your hostess with the mostest, Gaia Morrissette. And we bring you this wonderful episode because Tickle.Life believes that sex is safe, sex is healthy, and sex can even be playful. And we want to normalize sexuality. So throughout this episode, you probably hear me giggle and laugh a lot. That's a good sign. That means that this is a safe space. This is a safe conversation for us to have. So I bring you our new guest, Buck.
Hi.
Welcome to the show.
Thanks. And I like giggling. Giggling is good. Laughing is good. We need more of that today.
Good. So the two of us are just going to be a big giggle fest then.
We're just going to be laughing. So if you're listening, we're just laughing. It's a laugh fest.
So Buck, what are we talking about today?
So, I don't know if your listeners even know who I am, but maybe we could talk about my life and my life as a transsexual person and my journey to get to my space, not only as a man, but also sexually. It was a very difficult space for me to get into. So I think maybe that might be the appropriate thing that we can discuss here. And maybe there's people listening who are in the same struggle that I struggled to get to. Now I live a beautiful, amazing, special, like magical life that I would never in a million years think I could be this person. So I think sharing my life so that maybe somebody else out there who struggled like I had to struggle could see that. There's
That's
a lot
beautiful.
of opportunities today. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
All right. So where do we want to start?
well, I was born in 1962. I'm 58 years old. And I always felt like a boy. I mean, I grew up in the San Fernando Valley in Southern California. I was raised as a tomboy, like I was a little girl who wanted to be a little boy. And my parents were super cool about it. And I didn't have a bad childhood, which a lot of people would think somebody like me might have a bad childhood. No way. I had an awesome childhood. My parents were really open about me being, little Buck. The problem always comes, and that's for everyone here listening and you as well, puberty. Puberty is the nightmare of the human body. And so for a person like myself, a transsexual person, it can be a nightmare. It can be death really for us. And so
So let's
suicide.
talk it. Let's talk about
Yeah.
that. Let's drop into that
Excellent.
that piece. All right.
Excellent.
So
Yeah.
tell us when you were, you start to hit puberty.
Mhm.
Did you know that you felt like you were a boy? Like when did you know that?
Yeah.
Like when did that
Yeah.
that construct happen? Like when did that start to happen for you?
I'm going to tell you from the minute I was born, I can tell you that I never, and it is a very interesting question to ask somebody. What do you mean you felt like a man or a boy? What do you mean you felt like a girl? What does this mean? Because today we do talk about gender more as a construct, which I do believe that's true. But what I also believe is in biology. And so biologically, I am a female bodied person. But what I can tell you is even from a little child, I can remember being very much like, I want to be the brother. I want to be the brother to my sisters. I want to be the boy. I want to be called he. I can always remember that, and always being teased at school because I was a girl who looked like a boy. So pretty much I could say my whole life, I have always felt pretty much like Buck.
So when you started to hit puberty, what happened? What was
Well, okay,
that?
so what happens is, okay, so remember how old I am, 58. So puberty started for me late too. So I think most women get their period, or girls, I think some, like now they're starting early, right? Like 13 or something. Like I didn't start
It's
till I was
about
15.
Yeah, actually they can start as young as 10.
I mean, I'm just like, holy shit. That in itself is a nightmare for a 10-year-old little girl, even a little
Yeah.
boy, but I think it's worse. I personally think it can be a little bit more intense for a little girl. Because we start to menstruate. And so what happened for me at 15, all my other friends, well, the girls I hung out with were very few. I mostly hung out with boys, even at 15. So I got my period, and I had no idea what it was. I'm like, my mom didn't even tell me about my period. She told my sisters, but
Oh.
she didn't tell me. And I didn't know what it was. So that was the beginning of the end for me, because I'm bleeding out of my, area there. And I don't even know what that even means. And boobs started to grow. And then
So
that
what
was,
happens? So what happens in that moment as when you see blood? Do you go to
yep,
your mom?
yep.
What happens?
I screamed, "Mom, I'm bleeding!" I'll never forget. She ran in the bathroom. She's like, "What? Oh, you're menstruating." I'm like, "What? Well, what is menstruating?" And she's like, "You're becoming a woman." I want to cry right now, even thinking about it. You're
Mm-hmm.
becoming a woman. Those words were like a knife to my throat.
Mm-hmm.
And that was it. I started feeling suicidal, became alcoholic, drug addict. I became a cutter. I became everything and anything I could do to relieve myself from the pain of becoming a woman. So yeah, it was a downfall for me right there. That started everything to basically try to get myself off of this earth.
Mm-hmm.
So
And
yeah,
and so how long did that period happen for you?
so basically, all it happened until I was about the age of 30, I think something like that, when I got sober. And so for year upon year, I didn't graduate high school. I was lost. I became an alcoholic. I had suicide attempts, put in mental hospital. Back in the day, they put me in a psychiatric ward. I told everybody I felt like a boy. They were like, "No, you're just a gay woman." Blah blah. It was forever and ever and ever oh, I got to transition, which was also a whole story in itself because I was one of the first people to transition here in Los Angeles. Both of my doctors had never even done trans surgery before, so I became sort of like an experiment to get to
Mhm.
this space.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what ends up happening during that period of time with your dating life, your sexuality? What's going on there?
So I became a gay woman because that's sort of the space I was not on. I don't want to say pushed into because I don't feel that. I feel that that was the tools the therapist had. And the tools the therapist had, they saw a masculine woman who said
Mm-hmm.
they felt like a guy. And so back in the day, there was no transgender as you see today. And
Yeah.
so they just kept pushing me toward this space, which, I don't blame them in any way, shape, or form. It was all a space for me to be this guy today. But that said, they didn't help me. It made it worse. So I ended up, living the life of a gay butch woman, and that was also very difficult for me. And because I kept saying I'm a man, and everyone just kept making fun of me, and then so for year upon year, I became a major alcoholic, drug addict, just running around the streets of LA and just doing my thing to stay alive on some level. I ended up becoming a model. I mean, we'll be here hours if I tell you my whole life, but bottom line is I got discovered on the street. I went to Europe. I became a fashion model as a woman, which heightened my drug addiction. And then next thing you know, I'm just such a mess there. They send me back to the States. I become homeless, drug addicted, prostitution. I did prostitution on the streets to buy crack until eventually I got sober. And that was really where my whole life changed and why I'm sitting here talking to you today is definitely sobriety.
So what was the catalyst to get to choose sobriety, to get sober? Like
Mm-hmm.
what was that
Prostitution.
okay.
Prostitution, homelessness, and crack addiction. And I went home with a client, and that client from the street, and I went home with him, and he almost killed me. And that was my wake up call. I said, I'm gonna die. I knew it. I saw death in my eyes. He was like, I really to this day I think he was a serial killer, and to this
Mm,
day I almost got chopped up in little pieces, but I escaped. And that then I said to myself, God, if I stay alive, I will become a better person. and I did. I got to stay alive. I mean, it's pretty intense what I went through to
mm-hmm.
get to this space today. So it's why I celebrate my life.
Mm.
Honestly, you could call me, do anything you want to me. I don't care. I earned this life for sure.
Okay, so you almost die.
Mhm.
That's wake up call.
Yep.
How do you go into recovery? What happens
So I
next?
call up one of my ex girlfriends who I somehow remembered her number. Remember, I'm homeless. I have nothing. I don't have anything. No, I have a bag of clothes. That's it. And so I remembered her phone number, and she told me that she said that if I don't go to the rehab that she'll get me into, she'll never speak to me again, and don't ever call her. And that was the catalyst for me to get into a rehab and sobriety. Sobriety. That's it. I'm gonna say it. Sobriety is
Mm.
what cleared my mind and really got me into a space of being able to sort of function in a way that I could save my life.
So how long were you in rehab? In that.
So I ended up going to a rehab that was sort of like the best rehab you could go to because it was all just totally bare bones. You read that book, you study every day, you go to, group meetings, it was hardcore. And it's the reason why I'm here. So that was a place downtown in Santa Monica, California called Claire. And I was there for a month. And then, I just kept practicing my AA. I went to AA. And so it did. AA saved my life for sure. And I practiced the book and I practiced the steps and I got regimented and I just really cared about myself. Really, sobriety is about caring about
Mm-hmm.
yourself and about caring to get to a space of life. And that's why I really am lucky today that I have got to be in that space.
So at what point now after the sobriety do you realize that you're going to move into this transition place? So
Right. So that, right.
where does that come into play?
Yeah. So through sobriety, things happen. You start to wake up and you start to see the world and you're like, oh, but I'm still like this butch woman saying I feel like a man, and everyone's still like, well, no, you're just a butch woman. Until eventually I found a therapist, and the therapist was a lesbian woman, and I went to her office every once a week, 45 minutes. I sat there, wouldn't say a word to her. I was so worried what she was going to say to me, that you're just a gay woman. And then finally, at the fifth time I went, she's like, Buck, when you're ready, we can have a discussion. I literally sat in her office for every session, not saying a word. And then I just said, I have to say it. This is ridiculous. And then I just said, I pulled my hat off and I said, and I remember crying, and I said, Casey, I feel like a man. I don't feel like a woman. And she said to me, I believe you. And on that, honestly, it's going to make me cry because of that, I'm here. Seriously, she was the one who
Beautiful.
was the first person to say to me, I believe you. What can we do to make this happen for you? And she had no skills. She didn't know. This was back in the day before the internet. We didn't even have the internet. We had nothing. We had no tools, nothing. But I'm going to tell you, she was very instrumental in bringing me to this space.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, thank you. It really
That's
is. It's amazing.
So then you end up on the journey of the both of you trying to figure it out together.
Hmm.
Is that what?
That's right. And so I went to a bookstore because that's what we had back in the day, bookstores. And
Yeah.
there was an LGBT bookstore down the street called A Different Light Bookstore. And I still have I went to the magazine rack. I went to the books. I don't know what the fuck I'm looking for. I don't even know. It's called a sex change. I don't have any idea. We didn't talk about that. And so all you saw back in the day were transsexual women. So you only saw men becoming women. You never saw women becoming men. And so I just remember I found this book. It was called Gender Resource Guide for Male to Female. And then I just was like, what? And then I was like, oh my God, it's the opposite of me. And then
Mm.
I went and I looked at it was resources, doctors, clothing, everything a trans woman needs. And I was like, what? And it was, oh my God, this is even more, it gives me chills. It was the last one sitting there.
Wow.
I swear to God, I'm just like the sun, God. Whoa! I'm just like, what? I mean, today I still have it. That's why it's just like, it's instrumental in me being here. And I found a doctor, and he was a doctor who administered hormones for men becoming women. And so I called him with the blessing of my therapist, and he said, well, you got to get a note from your therapist, which is what we had to do back in the day. And he said, I'll be honest with you, I never have done a woman becoming a man. And he said, you will be my guinea pig. He actually said that to me. And I'm like, dude, I'll be whatever you want me to be. And then that was it. I started hormones, and so I used to have a mantra. And my mantra was, if it doesn't work out, I'll kill myself. And that was always what I did from that moment on. Anything that I was doing to change my body or change myself, because I didn't have the internet and I couldn't see what I was going to look like, or any other trans men. And
Yeah.
so who knows? I'm going to grow horns and a tail. And I'm like, what? I don't even know. I'm like, I don't give a fuck. I'm going to do this. And if it doesn't work, I'll kill myself. It was something I said all the time to myself. And luckily and then eventually I looked in the book and I found a guy to do my top surgery. And again, same thing. Never worked with a trans man, told me I'd be his first. He brought a new surgery from Europe. He tried it on me. It worked out amazing. And I was just like, I'm supposed to be here.
Mm.
It just was too smooth and too amazing for back in the day when there was nobody else doing it. So really, I do believe the universe pointed me into that direction.
That's beautiful. And when you started taking the hormones, what were the shifts that were happening?
Yeah, so of course, again, no one knows anything about a woman becoming a man. I didn't know I was gonna look all crazy like this. And then I swear to God, it's all in your brain. He gave me not even like a tiniest bit of testosterone you can. Now I take 1 cc of testosterone every week, but before I was only taking like a tiny drop. I just remember being like, oh my God, my whole life was about to change. Oh my, because it's mental as well as
Mm-hmm.
physical. And then what I started seeing in the first month, what I started seeing was a receding hairline. And so, if most people know, I'm totally bald. I lost all my hair in the first year. And I started seeing that. I started seeing the structure of my face change. In the first year, I saw my nose. If you could go on the internet and see pictures of me before when I was a woman, you just see a whole different, like literally, it looks like my sister. So it actually changed every physical aspect of my body to be more masculinized.
And as you were seeing these changes happen, how are you feeling about those changes? Were you excited about the changes?
Excited. Oh my God. But guess who wasn't excited? Partners. So at the time, I had a woman partner who identified as a gay woman. And so she was like, I'm into women. You look like a gym queen. Because, of course, I was going to the gym and like, rah, I was like, I'm going to be a dude. And she was so freaked out. She's like, nope. So I lost my girlfriend at the time, and it actually was the best thing that ever happened to me because I ended up doing like 2 or 3 years of my transition alone, which really was great because nobody could, take me off track. And I really say that a lot to the younger generation. If you're not in a relationship, you might want to think about not being in a relationship for your first couple of years so you can really focus on your own needs and your own self. It's not healthy when you have someone telling you like, oh, you look weird, or it's like, oh man, that's
Yeah.
some negative shit. Yeah. So yeah, it was amazing. It was like magic. I was on my way, and there was no one that was going to pull me back. I don't care who you were. No, get out of my way. I'm going to become that man. Was really how I felt.
And then when it happened, so what happens when like it arrives, and at what point do you feel like
Yeah,
it arrives?
sex. I
Okay.
feel like that's when I arrived. Sex. So I haven't always been detached from my vagina. Even as a gay woman, I had sex. I'm very sexual. I've always been very sexual. But I'd strap it on or I'd be very masculine with it, and I didn't let women touch me down there. And I was very much about wearing clothes and doing things that didn't necessarily expose my female body, right? So during my transition and really becoming this dude, and like, of course, one of the things I'm just desiring to have is a penis because that's what men have, is a penis. And I like penis too. And I see these penises everywhere and I'm like, I want one of those. It didn't happen because first off, the internet wasn't really around, and the things I did see, and again, disclaimer real quick here. I don't want anybody to think I'm anti-bottom surgery because I am not. It's just, again, my story, and it's about why I chose not
Mm-hmm.
to do it. I believe today we have an advanced surgery and it's doing really amazing things for these young trans guys. But for me, it didn't happen because it just wasn't there. I wanted a functioning penis. I wanted to have sex. I wanted to pee through it. I wanted to, get erection. Didn't happen. It was a pretty intense surgery. It just was too intense for me. And then you have a more than a 50-50 chance of losing your orgasm. I'm like, you should have told me that first because I wouldn't have wasted your time here, dude. I'm like, I'm out of here. So, it just didn't work out for me because there was too many negatives and not enough positives. And I'm not gonna do this just to have a penis because I realized the penis is for you. It's not for me. I'm totally comfortable with my vagina. So I started masturbating. And through masturbation is when I really became really connected to my body, my soul, my vagina, my everything. And that's when I said, wait a minute here. I have this magical thing between my legs, and everyone's telling me I can't use it. You're not a man. But I'm like, no, go fuck yourself. And that's sort of when I really just sort of realized I got to show this to the world because this
Mm-hmm.
is important. And I believe that there are other people like me struggling out there with sex. Because if
Mm-hmm.
we don't have normal genitalia, then we're struggling with sex. Because how do I approach you in a bar? How do I approach you in sex? It's not, now it's whole different. But 25 years ago, oh, it was difficult.
Was there any scary moments
Oh,
in that?
all the time.
Mhm.
All the time because I didn't want to tell people about my vagina because look at me, right? I mean, I didn't have such a big beard back then, but I did look very male. And so I became the guy who disclosed. I became the guy that said, fuck it, I'm just going to tell people because this is uncomfortable for me. When you pull your pants down and you have a vagina and they're expecting a penis, it's uncomfortable. Or when you pull out a dildo or you say, wait a minute, I got to, and they're like, what? because I've always passed so well. Even as a woman, I passed as a man. So I realized by disclosing, I'm alleviating for not only myself but for you, and it's not fair to you either. And once I disclosed, nobody ever said no. So I was like, I was like, actually, honesty is always the best policy.
Nice.
So I'm big about disclosure. Today I talk a lot about it for the youngsters, and like, you got to disclose these kinds of things. Whether you feel that you don't need to, you have to respect the other person. And if you are passing as much as I do, it is not responsible for you not to say something. You got to say something, because it's just uncomfortable for some people to go with a transsexual person. And I want you to make the choice before we get into a bad space.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. So what's the one thing that you know now that you wish you could have told the younger version of yourself?
That your vagina is amazing. I wish I would have told myself that, because I hated it for so much of my life. And so on some level, I feel like I get to shout it to the world. Don't get rid of your vagina. It is really one of the things I learned, is to accept my body. Change the things you can, and the things you can't, deal with them. And, it's the serenity prayer, and that's what I learned from AA, was really some things you can actually change. Some things you'll never be able to change. I have it literally tattooed on the side of my leg, because it doesn't start with God, because that's how it originally. It says goddess. I changed it to goddess because I'm a hardcore feminist. So that being said, every day I think to myself, these are the things I can change. These are the things I can't. How can I make it better for myself? So I realized I can't change my genitals. I could change my chest. I could change the way I look. Just that alone made me be able to walk the world so comfortable and not worry what other people think about me. So that's really my message, is just learning how to self-love, becoming yourself. The things you can change them. The things you can't, figure out how you can handle dealing with them.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful.
Right on.
So how can people spend more time with you? Like, first,
I'm accessible.
Let's start with, what do you do in the world?
Okay, that's a good question. That's a good question. So I'm also an entrepreneur and a guy who creates. So I'm a creator. My career started in pornography, but now I create sex toys, or what I like to call sexual wellness products, for the trans male community. So I created the world's first transgender male sex toy. I create lubes for trans men. I create body products for them, washes, all those kinds of things. And I'm also in the cannabis business. So I also have my own cannabis company. And so today you can find me at buckangel.com, Twitter Buckangel, Instagram Buckangel, Facebook I'm not real big on, but you can find me there, official Buckangel. So I'm accessible too. Anybody who wants to reach out to me, I am here for you. So just reach out to me.
And how can people buy those products and find those products?
Right on. Thank you. Buckangel.com. Everything is there.
Beautiful.
Everything is there. Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that.
That's exciting,
Yeah, it is. It has helped so many guys deal with their vaginas. I created a product called the Buck Off, so you don't have to touch your vagina. It just slips over your clitoris and you stroke like a man. And it literally changed these dudes. They're just like, what? So now I got all these dudes masturbating. That was my ultimate goal in the world. I'm going to get everybody to masturbate.
I love it.
Right on.
So thanks. Anything else that you feel like that somebody should know?
No, I think that giving me the space here to talk about that, I appreciate it. And there's kids out there struggling. When I say kids, I'm 58, so I say kids to you, to everyone who's 1 year younger than me. I'm sure you're like 20, so I'm just like 20-year-old is not a kid. But I just do that because I've gotten this Trampaw moniker now, so everyone calls me Trampaw. But for me, it's just, I'm just so lucky to be in this space today and just say my journey, and hopefully somebody hears my journey and someone says, wow, I can do it too. I didn't have that when I was growing up as a young trans man. I didn't have any of that. I didn't have a guy to see, wow, I get to see an older trans guy. I think it really helps you. It's with anything, right? In any world, even in the sex world, when you see an older person who's been in porn for a long time and they're still successful, I think that's pretty awesome.
That's beautiful. All right, audience. Thanks for hanging out with us. Don't forget to check out Tickle.Life. And if you want to spend more time with me, you can find me at GaiaMorrissette.com. And don't forget to check out my podcast called My Orgasmic Life. Have a juicy day and may it be filled with exploration, honesty, and love. Bye bye.